we have 4 simple rules. Number 1, we don't discuss politics, ever. Number 2, this is not a religious channel, and while you might hear people say, God bless you, or I'm going to pray for you, or I wouldn't have gotten through this without my faith, that's fine. What's not fine is to say, my God is better than your God, or here's why you're not getting into heaven. It's not going to fly. Number 3, we believe wholeheartedly if you can't control your tongue, then you can't control your life. So while on board, there's not going to be any cursing in the live chat, period. And number 4, there is no room for mean people on the lifeboat. Because we discuss very sensitive things from people's past in our group setting, we got to protect those people. The only way they feel confident and comfortable discussing those things is in an environment that is free of trolls and mean people. So if you're a mean person or you're a troll, we're going to block you for life. And if your account happens to be less than 24 hours old, we're probably a little suspicious right from the word go. Why? Well, because there are people in this world who enjoy being cruel solely for the sake of being cruel. It's not going to fly here. But if you're here because you're trying to get sober and live your best life, then you might find that the lifeboat is just that, a lifeboat. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and we will see you on deck.
Hey, everybody, I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you're on the lifeboat. Glad that you're all here. People, let's do a little bit of a recap, right? We'll keep this recap short and sweet. But if you didn't tune in last night, then you missed the first half of my bobblehead partner's life story as it pertains to his drug habit and his previous drug usage. To bring you up to speed, he did a lot of drugs. And recapped sort of a downward spiral that in most ways I think mimic a lot of the same story that everybody that goes into opiates from the pill type of addiction. He started out like so many of us trying to control the addiction, did things like giving the pills to his wife to get her to dole them out, all the different things that almost everybody who has fought addiction has tried to do. You know, that delusional process where we think, I'll be okay if somebody else hands these, to me, and if I can do this, I'll be okay, or if I do that, I'll be okay. And he went to doing doctor shopping and all of the different the stuff all of us go through, especially if you're at a certain age, because a lot of the things that Mark talked about last night are things that people who are new to opiate addiction, because times have really changed, you just can't get away with the things that you used to be able to get away with. So, but what we really want to talk about tonight, and as we get going in this, people, there's so much redemption. Yeah. Okay. I am using the same one that I've been using. Yep. Okay, everybody. Yeah, I want to hang on, stay on hold for 1 sec here, people. We're just trying to iron out some technical difficulties real quickly with the live feed. So hang with us, and we're going to get this fixed. But as of right now, I am really choppy, and that's not going to work for this. So if you can hang tight. So hold tight, crew.
Hey guys, I'm gonna go to the weight screen just for a minute here, just so you guys understand. I'm gonna try to fix the choppiness. I think Tommy's audio was fine. It's just his, because I was hearing him fine. He was just really, really like bouncing back and forth. I don't know if it's what's going on there. I don't think it's my Zoom because I'm not doing it. So, and I bring you guys in through Zoom. So, anyway, I'll try to fix it.
Hey, everybody, I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are on the lifeboat. This, people, is pivoting on the fly. All right, we went back to some old equipment. That was my hand you just saw a close-up of. And I apologize for the lighting, but the old equipment is and the new lighting are not exactly compatible. So we're going to roll with this because we didn't want to miss another show, and we figured we would pivot to the old school and get this thing up. So quality be a little different. But so what I was saying before I started freezing all over the place is that so last night we heard an awful lot of Mark's story, and some of it, especially if you care about the guy, was painful. And that's the case with a lot of the stories that that we do when we interview people. A lot of the stories, get people to talk about things that are, under the best of circumstances, difficult. Under the worst of circumstances, I mean, when the show was over, we found ourselves sitting and sort of staring at each other where I had to say, hey, if this gets really tough later on, then ring me up, because when you start to talk about some of the things that you did in relation to your family and the people that you love, that really drags up some tough stuff from your past. And if you've done an interview on the lifeboat, you know what I'm talking about. But the reason we couldn't end there, people, is because this story is, there's an awful lot of redemption in this story. And just as important, the fact that Mark is here 11 years later through medical assisted treatment is something that I think gives hope to a lot of people, because right now in this country, and I won't go off on my rant, I promise you, but right now in this country, the opioid crisis is reaching a real tipping point, right? Even the government's numbers are now catching up to ours. And so I want to make sure that we talk about exactly how you did what you did, Mark, because this is hope for an awful lot of people, because the method that you went with to get sober, I think, is the answer to a lot of people's prayers right now. And literally, I'm not being melodramatic. This is life or death stuff, because the strength and the availability of some really, really potent stuff right now is threatening the lives of an awful lot of people, many of whom are crew members on this boat. So tell us a little bit about the journey, after, the rehab, okay, and after this whole process started.
Okay. Yeah, I would start with this, guys. I guess yesterday we kind of ended right after obviously there's a lot more to all of what I said last night. I mean, there's obviously, I can't go over 11, 12 years in an hour show, right? Even prior to, so it's actually more like 15 or 16, maybe even 17, depending on what you look at there. But listen, when I was looking for rehab facilities and stuff, I didn't even really fancy or even look into an outpatient program. I guess because I wasn't aware, I just didn't understand the what was going on there. And there was a very, very bad stigma, especially here where I live. And I know it's countrywide, nationwide, worldwide. The stigma of any of the medicated assisted treatment is, and let me say this too, that stigma is starting to balance out. Okay, guys, it is. I don't know how else to say that, but at the beginning it was really, really bad, and for a lot of good reasons, to be honest with you. Because when you hear things like the words pill mill, those types of words, they hit you in the face and they stick in your brain, right? So you form an opinion based on what others are telling you, because you simply don't have any knowledge of it. You don't have any reason even to look into it. For me, that's what it was. Because like I said before, guy, I never did anything before my pills. I just didn't. And I don't judge people that did, because I've learned not to be that person, and that takes a while to get there. But as far as the medicated assisted treatment, I found an outpatient facility before I came home from rehab. That was one of the things that they really wanted us to concentrate on, And we had one here where I live, and it had been here forever. I mean, we're talking 15 years before I got into treatment. And back then, obviously, buprenorphine was not an option.
Right.
It was straight methadone. And I'm not judging people that are on methadone. I mean, I think whatever you guys can use there to get you away from all that street stuff is the best thing that you can do. You know, and you can work your way to buprenorphine if you need to. You know, and some people never do. Some people go to that and stay on it, and they live a really good life. But just to give you guys a little perspective, back then, they would ask you to see your track marks before they would dose you. So you had to be actively using to get this medication, and that's the only reason why I bring that out, because that's the stigma part of it, right? So I go to this outpatient facility, and I happened to come in right at the time they were just starting their buprenorphine program. They called it the RX program because you would get a script, right?
Right.
So,
instead of dosing every single day with the.
Yeah, instead of dosing every day, you would go there. You would, you know, you could dose there. They had it there. Don't get me wrong, but for most people, they wanted a script or whatever. And if you broke rules or their rules or whatever, you would have to come off of that RX program and come there and dose every day. And guys, there were 4-hour lines. Okay, I'm not kidding. They would go around the hallway, out the door, and down the street for people waiting to dose. And when I first got into treatment, this thing was like really, it just seemed really unorganized to me, at least at that time. And I understand it was organized chaos is what it really looked like. And so, you know, there were times where you would get in that line and you would go up there, because I had to go once a week just to get the script and give a urinalysis test, the UA.
Right.
So I would go there and I would get in line just like everybody else. And, you know, you're standing there, you're waiting. And then you would get to the window where you would have to see the nurse right there. And either they're giving you a script, you're paying, and you're getting out the door. Or you would be getting, like, you would wait in that line for however long you did. And then they would come to the window and say, well, you need a urine screen before you can get your script. So now you got to step out of line, go do another screening, and then come back and stay in that same line. So this is why the stigma got really, really bad. It was in a place from here, at least in my town. It was behind our local mall. Okay, so if that puts you in any kind of mindset on how many people seen this place, and this is why I think it's important for people that are addicted and trying to get into recovery to understand what I'm getting ready to say. You don't want to walk in there looking like you're a Walmart reject. And I know that sounds maybe mean or whatever, but frankly, there's no other way to say it. In other words, what I'm saying is, don't show up in your pajamas. Don't show up. I mean, because that's what it was. I'm not even kidding. You know, you come in, it's like they would just roll straight out of bed and come get in line. They didn't care. Flip-flops in the middle of winter. I mean, it just... And why I bring that up is because the whole community's seen it, because the line was out the door.
Right.
So it was giving the community that. And that's something we had to fight. And we even had a group called Pride versus Stigma or something. Just trying to understand what was going on. And it took me a while to get to that point. But nowadays, things are different. And that's why I said all that I just said.
Well, you know what, though? It says a lot because of how far we've come, and it's been the necessity of it, I think. But one of the things that, you know, you really, when you're first starting out in recovery, I was talking to somebody about this today, that first week or so is so difficult. It's just a very difficult time because the reality of the fact that you're a drug addict, for a lot of people, that's just really sinking in as you're starting to get sick and you're starting to go through all that. To have to show up and stand on line with 100 people that you've never met, who are all basically, you know, in that early stage of recovery as well. So many times that process had people turn around and walk directly back to their car. I mean, I was that guy. The first time I showed up at a clinic like the one you're talking about,
was about 17 years before I finally got sober. And I remember standing out there in Utah in the freezing cold at about 5 o'clock in the morning, lining up. And it was about a 10-minute wait before you got inside the door. And the person that said, I'll pay, I'm going to take you down there. And, this is a great thing. And they weren't even on drugs. They just really wanted me to sort of get my life together. But I remember looking at him, and I won't quote exactly what I said, but it was something along the lines of, no, this isn't happening. And you find yourself, judging your addiction to everyone else's. I'm not as bad as these people. Look at these people. And it's a good point. If you do show up there looking like, the end of the world, you may just run off somebody.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Well, what's happening is you whether you think you are or not, you're representing where you're at by your clothing and by the way you're carrying yourself. Because that's what's actually happening there. Tommy talks a lot about, making his bed every morning, stuff like that makes you feel normal. Now I get when you first get there, right? I'm not talking about those people. I'm not talking about intakes. I'm talking about people that have been in this facility for 2 to 3 years and know that they don't need to be doing that, right? Because I know that when we all get help, our hygiene goes to crap and all that stuff, right? So, and this is something that a person that's not addicted or hadn't had any mental breaks or any kind of mental issues wouldn't understand the fact that how could somebody let their hygiene go like that? Well, it's because you just stopped caring.
Yeah.
Nothing else in the world matters, not even wiping your behind, except for that drug. If you had a choice of getting your drug or dumping some in your pants, you're going to dump some in your pants and go get your drug. I mean, that's really what's going to happen. And, and I stress that to people that have never been addicted, because it does give them some sort of a visual about what we will do to stay, not get, and I would say this too, not getting sick, because that's what it becomes at the end, doesn't it, Tommy?
Yeah, it really does become just trying to stay well. It's not trying to necessarily get high. And I'll tell you something that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle too. If the person is using a needle, right, there is a superstition that gets around among needle users that, and this is a fact, that getting in the shower and hosing yourself off and getting clean, you actually start to leach stuff out through your skin. And there are people that come to believe that by not showering every single day, basically the buzz stays longer, and there really is something to that. So, I mean, I've met guys who were needle addicts that wouldn't get in the shower for anything, because as far as they were concerned, it was costing them money. I mean, it would really gets to that point. The term that addicts often use is whether or not something has legs, meaning the length of the time you're going to need between fixes. And they'd say, well, the legs are a lot better if you're not, cleaning that film basically off of you. You're trapping all of that stuff in. And I realize that just sounds foul, but especially some of the old timers, there's no way they're not getting in that shower.
Right.
I mean, which is terrifying, but it really is where this takes you to.
Yeah. And, you start believing things that you never thought you could believe or would do. I mean, and it really does. You become a version, you never lose yourself completely, but you become such a bad version of who you are. You know what I mean? You never lose it all the way, but and when we first get help, we have to understand that. We're still who we are. We just fell off the road for a minute. And it's, we can get back to where we were, at least. And I only like saying that because we can, usually what happens is on the back end of it, in my opinion and in my experience, you become better. You're a better person for it. You understand things at a level now that you didn't before. And just like I'm doing now, I'm sharing that with everybody here so they don't have to go through what I went through. And
there's a type of compassion that really only exists with people that have been there and done that. How long were you at that facility?
I was there 8 years, I think.
8 years?
8 or 9. And my insurance, the group insurance where my wife was working, where we get our insurance from, they switched insurance companies and they didn't have a contract. with my
Right.
facility. So that was no longer an option for me. So I had to find a different place. And,
How much change did you see in that 8 years?
oh my gosh, dude. It was huge. Huge changes that you've seen. I mean, it became like Tommy was saying, you judge your addiction to others, right? At least at the beginning. You start to
No
justify it.
question.
So I get in there, and at the beginning, it was more of a, man, I'm looking at these people like, should I even be here? Like you said, am I these people? I'm not these people. And I said, I'm using that word on purpose, these people, because
Yeah.
that tells you where my mindset was, because I wasn't even taking myself and putting me in that same group, even though I was.
Right.
I was these people now, and as soon as I recognized that, my whole attitude changed. As soon as you realize that you are these people, and your compassion level for people just changes, and your judgment, all that stuff just goes out the window on those kinds of things. And I would say this, that I think everybody has a moral line that they won't cross. I think, and I think that's different for everybody, right?
Yeah.
There's things in this world that we would rather not do, and just assume just to not, to die before we would do that, right? And these, I'm talking big things, right?
Sure.
And that's what I'm saying, So when we all had that different line, and some people's line is lower than what yours is. Okay, I mean, that's just what it is. Some people's lines is higher. It takes a lot more to get them to, you know what I'm saying? So
Addiction sometimes moves that line.
yes,
Things that you wouldn't have dreamed that you would have done, all of a sudden seem almost commonplace.
Yes.
Like theft or prostitution or any of the things that people have to resort to in order to not get into to illness. I would imagine over that 8 years, you also watched the stigma attached to this, because 11 years ago, as you were saying, briefly earlier on, that the stigma of anybody in medical assisted treatment, you're just a different kind of junkie.
Yeah.
As far as the world is concerned, you're no better off, really. It's just
as far as the world's concerned, you just traded one drug for another.
Correct.
That's what they think. That's exactly, because they think when you go in there, you're walking out high. That's exactly what what everybody thinks. Because you know how I know that? Because I used to think that.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, and that's where it comes from, right? I mean, and
Yep.
it's just, it's one of those things that we all do. We judge, and we don't even know we're doing it until it's pointed out, all that. But to speak to how much it changed, it started there, right? That was base camp. And I got in right at the beginning, right?
Yeah, 11 years ago.
Yeah. So I'm seriously, I was like their third outpatient program that they had at this facility. I mean, it's really, yeah. I mean, you guys don't understand how lucky I feel. I mean, honestly, because the other option for me, and again, I'm not speaking bad about methadone. That was the only other option, and I've watched my friends go through that, right? And I didn't want to be that person that had to go through that. I was going to, if that's what was going to get me off of the street drug. You know what I mean? But for me, I really wanted that buprenorphine treatment. I didn't want the other stuff. That's what I was focused on. And they even said to me when I went in there, they'd never had anybody come in there so proactive, because I was telling them, I mean, I was ready when I got there, right? And I have to say, thanks to my wife for that one, because she's very organized when it comes to stuff like that.
Did some research and
yeah. But just to kind of put it into perspective on, when I first started there, my intake visit, my doctor fell asleep.
Oh God.
I'm not even kidding.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. And because my counselor's with me in the doc visit, right? That's how it works. You go, at least in this facility, that's how it works.
Right.
So I'm sitting there, and the counselor's like looking at me like, what should I say? She didn't know what to do. So she just kind of kicked the chair, and he kind of aroused and all that. And here's the thing. I got lucky because I knew what the buprenorphine, because I'd already done the research on it, at least the basic. Yeah. So that's what it was. Now, what it slowly started to change. And that changed from the top down. And a lot of times it doesn't work that way. Usually it's changing from the bottom up. This was really strange to me that it worked this way, but it actually did. We got they had a new head of the facility come in there, and he started making small logistical changes that changed the stigma. Okay, how did he do that? One of the most simple things he ever did was put specific lines for specific things, like at the windows.
Right.
And he gave everybody, and people hated this at first, but he gave everybody a time frame that you had to be there. Now you could pick what time frame you wanted.
Sure.
But once you picked it, you couldn't change outside of that. You had to. I think they were charging $15 extra if you came outside of your time frame. And $15 to somebody that's paying every day—that's a lot of money. So,
it's also a little bit of structure. I mean, it's a pretty great idea if you think about it, because we've talked about this so many times. When you start to structure yourself and you start to actually have to punch a clock of any kind,
right.
Now there's a little bit of responsibility. You want to stay well. Well, this is what you're going to do to not get sick and to not fall back into that life. That it puts a little bit of responsibility onto the person in recovery. I think that's genius.
It was, and and like I said, it wasn't well received by the patients at first.
I would imagine not,
because they're used. Remember, guys, we're creatures of habit. That's why we change our habits. And the thing of it is that they didn't. A lot of people didn't like it at first, but after about 6 months, dude, I can't even tell you how much just that one change changed the whole community's outlook on this facility. Because what it did was
there's no longer a line around the corner.
They're not seeing. They're not seeing these people in their Walmart jammies down the street at 6 o'clock in the morning as the school bus drives by. You know what I mean? And this is the stigma that everybody gets, and this is how they get it. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times before I got in there how many bad things I heard. But like I said, that started to change. I seen it, and that's why I stuck around there as long as I did. I was never ever actively looking for another facility. The only time I did that was when the insurance thing had to change, right? And so that is changing. The stigma is changing for just little reasons like that. And the world is now waking up to the fact that this is not just something somebody chooses to do. This changes us in a way that it's a disease. Okay, and I know that there's going to be people out there that disagree with me on that, and that's fine. But for me, that's how I look at it. It's no different than giving somebody, in my eyes, a blood pressure pill, or something, or a diabetic getting their insulin. That kind of a mindset that people have to come across, and they have to really recognize that. And I realize it's hard for the general public to grasp that because they've been pushed.
And if that seems tough to handle, you may want to check out the interview we did with Dr. Jetmore, because it's a great one.
Yes.
And to hear it from a professional's mouth, and I thought the Jetmore interview was so fantastic because, this doc came on and said, well, I was that guy too. I just thought that you were all a bunch of losers. I mean, that really was his stance. And, the conversation that we had, we talked a little before we went live, and that was exactly his attitude. He said, I looked at addicts as just weak, people who were losers. And then as he started to watch what happened when these people could get that removed from their life, it was cool to listen to him, where he said, I watched people get their own homes, and I watched people, make families and get married, and, found out just how normal all these people were if they got a prescription that took care of the one problem that they had in their life. So
exactly.
Yeah. And I've watched that stigma disappear too. And I think it's every day it's, getting a little bit better.
It is. And I think the reason why is because guess what, guys? It works. That's why it's getting better. It works.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
The other thing too is that there's just nobody in America anymore who hasn't been touched by this.
Yeah.
I mean, it may not be you, it may not be your kid, but somebody who is addicted to opiates, or someone who lost someone to opiates, or somebody that, this opioid crisis has become so pervasive that, and if there's a silver lining to something as awful as this situation, it's hard to look at anything and see a silver lining, but
because it just is so widespread, I think that the attitude toward this this affliction has really changed in the minds of most people. I don't think that even since we started the lifeboat, you know what I mean? It's just really changed, and I think that's one of the only shining spots to this.
Well, I got a really good example for this, and people that haven't been here before, people that have heard me say this before, and it's just a small little story I'll tell you real quick. I was at my mom's house for her birthday, or it was my sister's birthday or something, and so we're there, right? And my sister had asked me to watch my nephew the next day. Well, that was the day that I had to, because I had to go every Thursday to get my script, once a week. That was the day I was going to have to go out there, and I'm like, yeah, I got to go out here to the clinic and get my script tomorrow. I could take him with me, and it was like I smacked my mom across the face. I mean, she stopped dead in her tracks and looked at me and said, "My grandson is not going out there with those people." And so I'm standing here looking at her, and what did I say just a little while ago? I had to realize that I was what? Those people.
I was those people.
And I looked at her, and I didn't want to make a big scene because I get it all, right? I just looked at her and I said, "Mom, I am those people," and I walked away. And she didn't know what to say, because, and let me say this first and foremost. She did not know what she was saying. It was not really supposed to come out in that kind of a way. And I get it. All right. Because I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about it too, even after the fact, after I, calmed down a little bit because it really hurt my feelings. And I was like, well, maybe I need to talk to her about this again or not. You start to kick that stuff around in your brain. And
Sure.
The next day I was sitting back thinking about it because it affected me like that. And I was like, you know what? I don't think I'd want to take my nephew out there anyway.
Amen.
That's an environment that I don't really want him exposed to. So what was I even thinking? Yeah, you know what I mean? And that's because that is, there's pros and cons to everything. And I think it's healthy for people to understand that our family members that love us will say and do things because they don't understand yet.
Absolutely. And we've talked about this on many shows too. You can't, you until someone is really sort of, fully informed. And even when they are, the reason there's a lifeboat, the reason there's group therapy is this is the unexplainable, right? What I don't have to explain to anybody listening to me right now can't be explained to people that haven't been there. It's not, I don't care how articulate you are. I don't care how much time you're willing to spend. Try to make someone understand why you take a substance that you know is in the process of killing you. And after getting sober, why you would pick up a bottle again or, go and get a bag again. It defies logic, right? Well, how do you define something that is illogical to someone who hasn't been there? There is no way to describe it. So it's definitely not mom's fault, but no, it's a great illustration.
No, and it does. I think it lets you know that, and I said it earlier, guys, I would have been saying the same thing before I came across my addiction, right? Yeah. And so you look at families, and this isn't so much the case anymore because opiates have touched just about everybody now, or some sort of addiction or affliction like that. I don't even know, man. The whole family dynamic is something that is hard and it changes. And there's families out there that, if they have never been touched by that, they won't know. So how can we expect them to understand what we're going through? We can't expect that, right? What we can expect them to do, and what we should expect them to do, is at least listen when we're talking.
Try to understand, sure.
Yes. And again, we go back to the whole, is it sympathizing or empathizing? People can empathize. You can go out there and you can talk to everybody in the world, and they can understand exactly what you're saying, and they know that it's going to be hard on you, and they can come to the conclusion, these people need help, right? But they can't sympathize because they never went through that addiction. They cannot feel that. They can understand it, but they can't feel it. And that's exactly what you said a minute ago.
Yeah, and what it really boils down to, people, is if somebody comes back from a war, right? they go into group therapy. If somebody has been through a horrific situation with, violent attacks on them or whatever, they go and talk to people who have been through the same thing. We don't go into a group therapy and say, all right, well, here's 6 businessmen that have never gotten high. Now I want you to go in there and do a group session with them and they're going to help you through this. No, because the only reason that group therapy works is because we can eliminate trying to explain something to someone that can't be explained. So many times somebody's come on the lifeboat and said, I relapsed. It was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. And, try explaining this to someone that has never been there, but we all go, oh yeah, been there.
Glad you're here.
I completely understand, what you did. I understand why you did it. I mean, not that it makes sense, but it makes sense to us because we've all been there. But so 8 years, at what point, so the insurance then pulls the rug out from underneath you. And people, if you're new to this, that happens so often. It is incredible.
Yeah.
So, so you were left having to find another facility. What was the game plan at that point?
Well, see, and that's the thing, right? I had to go find something. So the game plan,
and fast.
Yes, and fast. And at that time, at the clinic I was at, I had, because people that have never been to a place like this, there's tiers that you can accomplish and get to. I had, when you go out there at first, you're there daily. Then they move you up to 3 days, and then they'll take you to a week. I was there long enough, didn't break any rules ever, never had no, dirty urine screens and stuff like that. So I worked my way up to getting a 2-week script. Okay. So I would go there once every 2 weeks, and I had to show up for one group and a counseling session in a month. So that's what that was out there. So I go get my script that one time, and they said, hey, your insurance doesn't work here anymore. That's the other thing. They didn't call me and tell me. I just showed up. And if you guys don't understand, you cannot get a buprenorphine script in advance. Okay? And any kind of opiates like that, they're not going to give you any extra above and all that kind of stuff. They won't do it. And for good reasons, guys. Okay?
Sure, exactly.
This is something we deal with. So when I went out there to get my script, I had none. Right? I mean, because that's what they do. They take you down to the day. They don't want you having extra. So I go out there and they say, hey, your insurance doesn't work anymore. What am I supposed to do? Right? Well,
panic.
$400 is what they wanted. And I'm like, what? But I called my wife, and just like as always, she's like the freaking hero in my life, I guess. It's the truth, though. She didn't even hesitate.
Heather to the rescue.
Yeah, exactly. And she didn't even hesitate. She's like, buy the script. Buy it. Pay it. And then we'll find you something while you're in this time frame before you have to go back. And that's exactly what I did. So that's how I got to the new facility. But it was a blessing in a whole lot of ways, because all the COV, plus math, C plus math stuff, the stuff that everybody was locked in their house for 2 years. I'm not gonna.
Have we frozen up, have we?
It's back now, I think. Yeah, for whatever reason, the internet just went out and came right back on. That was odd.
Okay.
Are we, guys? Somebody give me a 5 for 5 in there if you could, so we can. I don't want to just keep moving if we're not there. I think we're good, but okay.
Yes, we got a 5 by 5.
Right.
We're good.
Sorry about that, guys. I know technically tonight it's a little challenge, but you know what? We're still going to do it. So
yeah, we're gonna pivot.
That's right. That's right. But anyway, guys, like I said, it was a blessing. I got to this new place, and it's called Groups. I'm just going to say their name. Please check them out if you don't know who they are. It's called Groups Recovery. They're now becoming nationwide. And let me tell you something. If you're nowhere near a facility that you can get to, if you're in the same state, they usually will have a provider for you, and you do things virtually. You're now able to do this virtually. If that is not a step and leap and a bound from what it used to be, I don't even know what to say. I mean, we go from standing in a 4-hour line in flip-flops in the snow with Walmart pajamas to now we're doing Zoom calls with our counselors, right?
Sure.
And don't get me wrong, there's something to say for in-person counseling, right? You get that human contact. It is a little bit different of an environment, but it's really, really close when you do what I'm doing now. And they give you a choice. But if you're, and I say this for people that think that there's no facilities around there that they can get to, because now if there's even one facility they have in that state, they will let you do that. You just have to be in the same state. You can't be outside the state. And that obviously that's because of legalities and things like that with scripts. And even though it's a national database now, yeah. So anyway, it was a blessing because guess what? That's where I met Dr. Jetmore. That's where I met, and believe me, guys, I had, and I would say this too, there's certain industries that if you look around, guys, are just, I don't like using the word overran, but that really does apply here. Overran with people that are fighting addiction. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And one of them is lawn care. Because there's no background checks typically. There's no urinalysis, any of that stuff, right? So these jobs that we can get without having to do that is usually where people that are fighting addictions on a continuous basis, they usually land in those places. But I've gotten people that I worked with at a lawn care place, 5 of them are now where I'm at. And there was only 15 people working at this place. So that should tell you, right? But it was a blessing. And because that whole 8 years before and working up to that, it gave me what you were just talking about a minute ago, like PTSD. Our brains now are wired to the fact if you can't get your script, because when I walked up there and they said, hey, we don't take your insurance anymore, it was like my world just crashed down in that second. I was freaking out, right? I didn't know what I was going to do. I had no clue what to do. And it's the same feeling that I get sometimes if you were to go to the pharmacy and they would say, hey, the medicine won't be in till this afternoon. So you automatically take this afternoon to never getting it. Right. It does. You do that in your own brain. And I experienced this and I've been able to, now that I know that that's happening in my own mind, I'm able to combat that. But as far as my journey and where I got there, that's how I got to where I'm at now. And again, there's a lot of things that happen in between. And I want to say this to you guys. Just because you get into recovery doesn't mean that you're okay. Okay? It just doesn't. You still are going to have to fight this. This isn't a overnight fix type of thing. It's not instantaneous. But what I want to say is, with medicated assisted treatment, there's so much data now, so much stuff now, it works. Okay? And I think we touched on this quite a bit in the fact that the big thing it does for you, the first thing it does for you, you're no longer sick. Okay? So what does that do? It gives you your moment of clarity. And it lets your brain, you're able to read and think about what you've been doing. And so that's what the medicated assisted treatment did for me. And at that point, you can start to fix things. You can see it for what it really is. Because before that, you were clouded with the chemical you were throwing in your body. Right. And you couldn't get to that clear mindset. You just can't. And I'm not saying that there's people out there that can't go cold turkey. I'm not, everybody's walk is different. But for me, and I would, we can start throwing stats at you and it'll get real boring and all that. But let me tell you something. There's a lot of people now, and even people that were so against it at the beginning are now saying, yes, please, let's do this. Because what happens? Crime rate drops, deaths drop, overdose deaths definitely go down. All these other things that we talk about that are bad things. You can't fix somebody if they're not here. And we have to realize that somebody is somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's mother, somebody's kid.
Just a little perspective too that just blew me away. I got, as I think I told you people, I'm now set up like the SS Enterprise, right? I've got computer screens basically everywhere. So I've seen some comments from TC 802, and when I saw 802 the first time, I thought to myself, I wonder if that would be the area code, as in TC 802, the state of Vermont. And after reading a few more comments, it is. TC, I am from the state of Vermont, and I talk very often. I'm an old man, and when I was growing up, believe it or not, I was a freshman in college, and there had been one heroin bust in the history of the state of Vermont. There was literally, this was not a drug problem that had ever sort of crawled into that part of the country. And I was, I read these statistics all of the time. And currently right now, Vermont is growing faster. They're the second fastest growing state in the union in terms of how fast the opioid crisis is growing within the state. And honestly, it breaks my heart. It really does. It's just the nature. If you could see the state, it's very, very rural. There are no 4-lane highways, no billboards, and to think that there really is no place in this country anymore that this epidemic is not running rampant. It really is. So yeah, just kind of a dose of perspective when I saw the 802. Such a small state that there's only one area code for the entire state. But yeah, so it is everywhere, people. It really is. Here's my advice. And Mark, you can tell me what you think. As far as the medical assisted treatment, people, there are a lot of people for whom buprenorphine has become a fallback. It has become, for a lot of people, you hear a lot about buying it on the street. You hear a lot about putting it up. When I was a practicing addict, I knew a bunch of people that had 5 or 10 of them laying around, but not because they had any intention of getting off of opiates, but because, if you just couldn't score, the following morning you could take some of that and it was going to keep you from having to deal with. But if you reach that point in your life where you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, there really is, and this is across the board, there really are so many different avenues that are available to you as an addict these days that weren't there 10 years ago. People having medical assisted treatment, not just for opiates, for heroin, things like that, but also for alcohol. Now there's really cutting edge stuff being done to take the fun out of it, so to speak. So there's implants that can be done that, naltrexone, which is the same stuff that we talk about for people who are having alcohol problems, but for people who are addicted to opiates, you put naltrexone in, and for X number of days, it's just not going to go bang. You can do opiates and nothing is going to, it just doesn't work. It literally blocks the stuff. But right. Yeah, there's a lot out there, people. And as always, talk to your doctor.
Yeah, exactly. And there's even stuff out there that I don't think we've even talked about too much here. There's something that is called, and I'll touch on this just for a second because I think it needs to be part of the conversation. It's stuff like, there's something called the bridge device. And I'm not sure if you guys have any clue of what that is, but I didn't know it. This is something that was introduced to me out there at the first clinic I was at, and they were just starting to do these things. And what it is if you guys Google it, they put it on your ear, and it's electronic pulses, and people go in there full blown withdrawal, and they have to dial it into your specific whatever, and you tell them when you're not feeling that anymore, and it works.
Right.
But it only lasts for a few days. For some reason, your brain can't continue that on. And I don't know why. I'm sure they're still working on it and stuff, but these are other options, and that's short-term stuff. And, when I first got on the buprenorphine back then, the first thought process was, hey, this is going to be a 3-4 month thing, right? Maybe a year. And then they started realizing that wasn't really the best way to do it for most people. In every facility there that I talk to now and where I'm at now, they allow you to control when you want to come down, and if you want to titrate down or if you don't, right? Everybody's goal should just be living their best life. It isn't necessarily focusing on getting off of a medicated assisted treatment. It needs to be that. And if you're living your best life includes getting off of that, okay,
Great.
I'm clapping my hands for you 100%. I mean, obviously, in a perfect world, that's what we all would want, right? I mean, who wants to have to keep doing, any kind of medication if you don't have to, right? I mean, but
Agreed.
we have to put it in perspective. We have to understand. And I'm so far out of addiction that but I've been so far into my recovery that sometimes I find myself forgetting how bad I felt, right? And so you have to start bringing yourself back into check. So if anybody's out there in long-term recovery, please understand that that's normal. It's normal to start forgetting that kind of stuff. And believe it or not, guys, it's a good thing. It's a good thing that you're starting to forget how, all that kind of a thing, because then your mind doesn't just dwell on it. And, but you have to always remember it at a level to make you not want to go back and do it. And that's a fine line for everybody to walk. Everybody's walk is different, and I'm just sharing mine. And and that's I really wish I could go into extreme detail and stuff, because the details do matter a lot. But I do want to touch on one more thing before we go ahead and call this a night. It's the relationships that you have to rebuild. And I know it's a big subject. We may even have to do a third one here. I don't know. Because of the technical issue. I get it, guys. And I do apologize for that. There's not much me and Tommy could have done with that. So
Yeah, it is what it is.
But listen, guys, building those relationships is key. Okay? You're going to have to understand that you're going to have to sit there and listen to somebody tell you all the bad things you did to them. Because that's what it's going to take. And I encourage people to do that as early on as possible. If you get into treatment, do it then. And that's what I'm saying, because if you've ever got a chance of mending a relationship, that is your best shot, because they know at this point in time they're standing right next to you, right? So they're there because they care. And if you don't share with them everything at that point, and I get you're not going to be able to tell them absolutely everything. I get that, right? But the big stuff, if they ask you a question, answer it. But make sure that you tell them if you don't want to know the answer to this, don't ask. Because I'm going to be bluntly honest. I think you had that experience with your dad a little bit, or a lot of it probably. But but what you'll find is when you start doing that with the people that you love, a lot of people want to come out here and do what me and Tommy are doing after that, because we see how much that relationship gets rebuilt, and we want other people that are in recovery and their families to experience that, because it is a rebuilding of such things. You might burn a bridge, but you can build some of it back. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be those relationships that are never ever going to be there. Okay, that's just an honest fact. But the people that are closest to you, that are sticking with you, take that time, take that moment. That is like your free shot just to spill it all. I'm telling you. And when you do that, I cannot tell you how liberating that is for somebody that's been lying to people for 15 years. Okay, you're holding all that in. You know all the lies you sold. That hits you in your consciousness, right? I mean, that's on you all the time. And when you get that moment of clarity, now you're realizing, hey, I did this, but man, I really probably need to tell them this kind of stuff if they want to know. And what I'm saying is, I'm not saying the day of recovery or any of that stuff. When you guys get to where you're able to talk about these things with your family, do it as early on as you can, because that's when they're going to have the most forgiveness for you. I promise. And there's going to be things that they probably can't get past. I mean, I'm just being honest there too. But we don't have to talk about all that, But the fact of the matter is, guys, at the end of the day, it becomes about how healthy you are for you and your loved ones around you. The people that you care about, that's who you're concentrating on. And everybody's walk's going to be different. I'm sharing mine. Tommy has a different one. But let me say this: in a lot of ways, they're the same.
Yeah, no question.
And that's why we
And it's
connect. It really is.
There are a million different stories, and yet every single one of them is the same. And as crazy as it is, the last comment I just read too from TC said he could walk out the door and find bundles of heroin basically on the street in Johnson, which, believe it or not, people, is probably where my story started. I am not from Johnson, Vermont, but I did go to college there. So I used to live right where he's talking about, and the fact that there's heroin all over Johnson, Vermont is just unbelievable to me. It's absolutely unbelievable, but it just reinforces people what we've been saying from Jump Street. This is a bad time right now, and the opioid crisis has really reached a point where even people that don't want to talk about it are being forced to talk about it. I mean, we've been beating this drum a long time. It's really good to know that people are starting to hear it. As always, to Seventh Son, thank you for your effort, man, because it was, I guarantee you it got something done. I really wholeheartedly believe that, and you're my hero. People, I want to say a special thanks to my bobbleheaded partner. Honestly, if you've never done this, it really is it's a tough thing, to relive this and to relive it alone is a tough thing. To relive it with the entire world watching is a challenge, and to do it out of the goodness of your heart because you think it's going to help some people is just good stuff. It really is. It says a lot about who you are, bud. I appreciate you. I love
Thank
you.
you. I love back at you, man.
Yeah, for real. So we're going to be back tomorrow night, same bat time, same bat channel. We'll be doing the same thing, only a little different.
Yep.
Between now and then, people, you know what? These are dangerous times, right? No matter how you choose, reach out and try to help somebody. For real. Try to save a life. And if that life is yours and medical assisted treatment is your answer, great. If there's another answer, fantastic. If your answer isn't the same as ours, we don't care. But you know what? Don't keep doing what you're doing, because that isn't going to work. I promise you, right? You got to come up with a different plan. And anything we can do to help you along the way, I promise you we're here for you. I am Captain Tommy Scoble, and on the other side of the glass,
Mark Wages.
And of course, this is a cat in a basket. Good night, everybody. We love you.